Okay, let's unpack this. You've probably been there, right? That moment, you really want to express yourself in English, maybe share an idea or just, chat.
Uh-huh.
And suddenly, poof, nothing. Your mind just goes blank.
Yeah, the words just aren't there.
Exactly. And you feel that awful disconnect between what's in your head and what actually comes out. It's something language learners know all too well. Speaking often feels like the biggest hurdle.
It's incredibly common, and there are good reasons for it. Unlike reading or writing where you have time to think,
Right. You can pause, look things up.
exactly, speaking is immediate. You have to grab vocabulary, use grammar, pronounce things correctly, and understand the other person, like all at once. It's a real juggling act.
And that challenge, that complexity, is exactly what we're diving into today. We're digging into some research here. It's a review paper looking at all the factors that actually influence how well learners speak English.
hmm Think of it as trying to understand why that freezing up happens,
Yeah.
based on what the studies are telling us.
Our mission really is to go beyond just saying, "Ooh, speaking is hard." We want to understand the specific problems learners run into,
Yeah, the common difficulties.
but also, maybe more importantly, get into those deeper underlying factors that actually shape your speaking ability. We're looking for those aha moments, those key insights.
The aim is to give you a clearer map, really, of what's going on when you speak, or, try to speak English. Not just that it's tough, but why it's tough and what's influencing it.
Exactly. So let's start with why speaking matters so much in the first place. Even with the challenges, it seems central.
Oh, absolutely. It's often the main way learners judge their own progress, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. If someone says their English is good, they usually mean they can speak it well.
And the research backs that up. There's data showing that outside the classroom, speaking gets used way more often than reading and writing combined, like twice as much, according to one older study. It's how we interact most of the time.
And it's not just social. The sources mention that good English speaking skills can really open doors, right? For education, for jobs.
Definitely. Better opportunities, globally speaking. It's become pretty essential.
So here's the strange part, the paradox. Despite being so crucial, speaking has kind of been, overlooked historically in schools.
It is strange, isn't it? You'd think it would be the main focus. But research suggests reasons like a heavy focus on grammar rules on paper.
The written stuff.
Yeah, and also it's just harder to objectively grade someone speaking compared to marking a written test.
Makes sense. Easier to circle a grammar mistake on a page.
Exactly. And older methods like grammar translation, they were all about reading texts and analyzing grammar, speaking and listening. Barely got to look in.
So, super important skill, but often underdeveloped by how it's been taught traditionally. Okay, let's break down what speaking actually is. It's more than just making sounds, right?
Oh, much more. The research really emphasizes it's about conveying a message, getting an idea from your brain into someone else's using language.
And it's not just broadcasting, is it? The sources call it interactive.
Yes, absolutely. A two-way process or a collaboration. You're producing language, sure, but you're also constantly receiving and processing what the other person says.
So you're listening and speaking almost simultaneously.
Pretty much. You adjust what you say based on their response.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning is built together.
Right. That interaction piece is key. Now, when we talk about good speaking, what are the main things researchers look at? There are two core ideas, I think.
That's right. The research consistently points to two key characteristics: fluency and accuracy.
Okay, fluency. That's the one everyone seems to chase, right? Speaking smoothly, sounding natural.
Yeah, fluency is basically being able to speak understandably so the conversation doesn't keep grinding to a halt. It means speaking at a decent pace, linking words and ideas,
Uh-huh.
using clear pronunciation, and getting the rhythm, the stress, and intonation right. So it flows well. It's often the main goal for learners.
And then the other side of the coin is accuracy. This sounds more like getting it right.
Exactly. Accuracy is about paying attention to the correctness of the language itself, the form.
So what does that cover specifically?
It covers using correct grammar, and not just basic grammar, but using structures that are appropriately complex for what you want to say.
Okay.
It also means choosing the right vocabulary, the precise words for the context.
Right. Not just any word, but the best word. And pronunciation fits in here too, not just for flow.
Absolutely. Correct pronunciation, the sounds, the stress, the intonation is crucial for accuracy because mistakes there can actually change your meaning or just make you hard to understand.
Ah, I see. So unlike a native speaker's slip-up, a learner's pronunciation error could really cause a communication breakdown.
Potentially, yes. It can impede understanding more significantly.
So good speaking is this balance then, being smooth and understandable, that's fluency, but also being correct in the details, grammar, vocab, sounds, that's accuracy.
That's the ideal balance,
Yeah.
yes.
But trying to achieve that balance, especially when you're learning, leads us straight into the problems, the hurdles. What specific difficulties does the research highlight?
Well, several recurring issues pop up in studies about learners trying to speak in, say, a classroom setting.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is probably the most common: inhibition.
Ah, the fear factor, scared to open your mouth.
Pretty much.
Sure.
It's that worry about making mistakes, fear of criticism, feeling shy, maybe ashamed if other students are listening. The environment itself can make you clam up.
Yeah, that's a huge one. What else?
Another big one is often described as having nothing to say. This is termed lack of topical knowledge.
Right. It's not that you can't talk, but you feel you don't know what to talk about.
Exactly. Maybe the topic isn't interesting to you, or you just don't have the background info or the specific words needed to discuss it properly. You just feel empty.
I can see that. Hard to talk about astrophysics if you don't know the first thing about it, even in your own language.
Precisely. Then there's a more practical issue, especially in bigger classes: low participation.
Just not enough time for everyone.
Yeah, limited speaking time per student. Often a few learners might dominate the conversation, while others barely say anything, or maybe nothing at all.
A real classroom management challenge. And the last common problem mentioned,
Using the mother tongue. Learners falling back on their first language.
which is natural, I suppose.
It is. Especially if classmates share the same L1. It's just easier sometimes. Or maybe you genuinely lack the English word for something, or perhaps even the teacher uses the L1 quite a bit, which kind of encourages it.
Okay, so those are the struggles we often see on the surface. The shyness, the silence, switching languages. But the research digs deeper, doesn't it, into the underlying factors influencing all this?
Yes, exactly. Moving beyond just the symptoms to look at the root causes or influencing forces.
Right, this is where it gets really interesting. What are those deeper influences?
Okay, first up, performance conditions. Basically, how the speaking task is set up matters a lot.
Like the rules of the game.
Sort of. Things like, is there time pressure? How much? Do you get any planning time beforehand? What kind of support or help is available during the activity? All these conditions affect how well you perform.
So being put on the spot is way harder than having a few minutes to gather your thoughts. Makes sense?
Definitely. Second, and this is a big one, affective factors. This is all about your feelings, your attitudes.
Emotions, basically.
Yeah. Key things here are motivation, how much you want to speak English, your self-confidence in your speaking ability, and crucially, your level of anxiety.
Anxiety again. It seems central to speaking difficulties.
It really does. Study after study shows this negative link. The more anxious you feel, the worse your speaking performance gets to be. And interestingly, learners often rate their own speaking skills quite negatively, seeing themselves as not very capable.
Wow, so the anxiety itself can make you believe you're worse than you are, which probably creates more anxiety. A vicious cycle.
Exactly that cycle. On the flip side, higher motivation and lower anxiety generally lead to people speaking more easily and more effectively.
Okay, what about other skills? Does being good at, say, listening help?
Immensely. The research strongly links listening skill to speaking skill. It makes sense, right? To have a conversation, you need to understand what's being said to you.
You can't respond if you didn't catch the question.
Precisely. Studies show a strong correlation. Better listening comprehension usually goes hand in hand with better speaking scores. They're intertwined in communication.
And that earlier problem, having nothing to say, does that connect to a deeper factor too?
Yes, that ties directly into topical knowledge. Simply knowing about the topic you're trying to discuss is critical. This background knowledge, your world knowledge, lets you access the right ideas and vocabulary.
So language skill isn't enough. You need something to talk about.
You need the content to apply the language to, yes.
What about feedback? How does getting corrected impact speaking?
Feedback is vital, but how it's delivered is absolutely key. The research warns against overcorrection.
Jumping on every little mistake.
Yeah, constantly interrupting someone mid-flow to correct grammar or pronunciation can really kill the conversation, make the learner super self-conscious about form instead of meaning, and just crush their motivation. It feeds right back into that inhibition, that fear of mistakes.
So trying too hard to make them accurate might actually stop them from becoming fluent, or even speaking at all.
That's the danger. The recommendation is generally for feedback that's more supportive, positive, maybe focused on specific things at different times, rather than constant correction.
Okay. And finally, what about the language itself? The nuts and bolts grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. How does your actual grasp of English mechanics play in?
Well, your knowledge of these linguistic components is obviously fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
Phonology, the sound system,
Mm-hmm.
syntax, the grammar rules, vocabulary, semantics, meanings, they all matter. English sounds can be tricky, for example, because spelling isn't always a great guide,
Tell me about it.
right? And errors non-native speakers make in these core areas can sometimes genuinely change the meaning or cause communication breakdowns, perhaps more so than minor slips native speakers might make.
So mastering those basics is important for just being understood clearly. And you mentioned psychological factors, again, tying back to feelings.
Yes, things like motivation, anxiety, inhibition, even personality traits like risk-taking, they come up again because they're so foundational. That fear of making errors, the potential embarrassment,
Yeah.
it can make learners just avoid speaking.
Protect the ego, maybe?
Exactly. Low self-confidence can make learners very risk-averse, and speaking is a risk. But avoiding the risk means you don't practice and you don't improve.
Yeah.
Studies clearly show anxiety negatively impacts performance.
It's that classic catch-22. Too scared to speak, so you don't practice, so you don't get better, which doesn't help the fear.
Precisely. But the good news, also found in research, is that the right environment makes a difference. Supportive classrooms, activities that feel safe, maybe giving learners some choice in topics, these things can lower anxiety and boost confidence, which encourages more speaking. So bringing this all together for someone listening, what's the big takeaway from understanding all these problems and factors?
I think the main insight is that struggling with speaking isn't just one thing. It's not just about not knowing enough grammar or words. It's this complex mix, the situation, your feelings, your listening skills, your topic knowledge, the feedback you get, your grasp of the language itself.
It's multi-layered.
Very. And recognizing which of these layers is maybe the biggest barrier for you personally is really the first step towards tackling it. Is it mostly fear? Is it vocabulary gaps on certain topics? Is it anxiety about sounding perfect?
Pinpointing your own main hurdle, yeah, that gives you power. And the research also really highlights how much the learning environment and the teacher's approach matter, creating those supportive, low-anxiety spaces where practice is encouraged, maybe even prioritizing fluency sometimes over constant correction, especially early on.
Okay, so summing up, speaking English well is this core skill, but it's influenced by way more than just language rules. It's about the performance conditions, your own confidence and anxiety, how well you listen, what you know about the world, how you're corrected.
And your fundamental grasp of the language components. It's all interconnected.
Understanding all that complexity is really key to improving, isn't it? It's not just about hitting the books harder. It might be about managing anxiety or finding better practice situations.
Absolutely. Which leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. Given how powerful inhibition and anxiety are as barriers, and knowing that fluency kind of requires speaking more automatically without constantly second-guessing every word, does focusing intensely on perfect accuracy right from the beginning sometimes work against developing fluency? Could it actually increase the anxiety that stops people from speaking in the first place?
That's a really interesting question. How do you find that balance between getting it right and just getting it out? How can learners and teachers navigate that tension for the best results?
Something to think about.